So for me, it just didn't tie up. I couldn't understand how a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old was not adjusting to the medication, how the dosages could be so high, how in taking medication that's meant to help a child was making no difference to this child's life.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me today for another episode of Head in the Clouds. If you didn't know, it's me, Adrian, from WorksheetCloud. Before I go any further, please hit that like and subscribe button and the bell icon so that you are notified when we launch our next video coming soon, because we normally post something funny-ish to give you a good laugh. The episode coming up is a little more serious than that. Today, I'm welcoming a special guest on our show, joining us virtually from Pietermaritzburg, KZN. She's one of our awesome WorksheetCloud moms, and she has a very interesting story to tell about ADHD and ADHD misdiagnosis. When she contacted us a few weeks ago and I heard her story, I thought we simply had to get on the show because it's a very interesting story to tell and it's really worth listening to. Shaz Pillay, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome to Head in the Clouds.
Hi, Adrian.
It's great to have you join us. I'm fine, thank you. Shaz, you and your daughter, Abrianna, have been through a lot over the last few years. Abrianna is currently in grade 7 and now doing quite well. Give us a history of how you and Abrianna got up to this point, going from a really tough time previously to her now excelling in school.
Okay, so Adrian, as I had mentioned previously, long story short, Abrianna basically, both of us went through quite some challenges over the years, in the sense that firstly, and the only reason I'm going to mention this is because it impacts a child. And I feel it's an important aspect. So I went through a divorce when Abrianna was quite young. And in doing that, I got divorced when she was about 2.5 years old. I got separated, and she was fine. By the time she reached 7, she had closed in. Her personality had changed and she had become a different child. In learning about her, I learned that it was at that age where she started to comprehend everything she had witnessed previously, everything that happened around her. She now started to understand it, which changed her mindset. In saying that, it also affected her at school because she went into her own little bubble. She closed up. Her personality was completely changed. Her confidence was gone. It also started to concern teachers. Then showed negative results in her schoolwork. And in saying that, the teachers obviously called me in, had a chat with me and said they're a little bit concerned about her. We then took her to an occupational therapist, took her for counseling. And from that, they diagnosed her with ADD because she wasn't hyper. So straight from there, she was put onto Ritalin. And this went on for a few years. So what would happen is she started the Ritalin. After about 2 months of being on the medication, the dosage would increase. And then another 2 or 3 months, the dosage would increase. And each time I'd be told that her body is burning it up and becoming immune to it. Eventually, her medication was changed to Concerta. Then same story happened, same trend where the medication dosages would increase and increase. Eventually, she reached a point of being on a 36 milligram twice a day. In saying all that I've said so far, the medication never helped her. It never improved her grades. It never improved her confidence. She was still the same child, just struggling as the years moved on.
So what, if I can ask, what age would she have been now at this point where you realized that this is not working?
She was around 11, just before she turned 11. Yeah, she was just before 11. And by that point, I can't say convinced, but deep down I had a feeling that the diagnosis, for me, I'm quite analytical. So for me, it just didn't tie up. I couldn't understand how a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old was not adjusting to the medication, how the dosages could be so high, how in taking medication that's meant to help a child was making no difference to this child's life. And in saying that, she was signed up for extra tuition after school. She was on WorksheetCloud. I was sending her for extramural activities to boost her confidence, like dancing and speech and drama and all of that. I invested a lot into her to try and help her as well. And she was also going for counseling weekly. So if that makes sense, all of this coupled together just wasn't adding up for me. Nothing was helping. And a gut feeling just said, let's just take her off it. And I'll be honest, how I took her off it was I gave her placebos, because I needed her to still know that she was taking the medication. And if somebody asked, she'd say, yes, I'm taking it. It was a mother's instinct and my own decision without consulting with anyone. And I did that. 2020 came about and she entered grade 6. Then March happened with COVID and lockdown. So she wasn't too long at school for the grade 6 year. She went back to school at the end of August 2020. But in 2020, one blessing came out of it was that she had a brilliant teacher, and take my hat off to all teachers previously. But why I say this particular teacher is she paid extra special attention to Abrianna. She hardly got to know Abrianna, but in a matter of 2 weeks of her being back at school in August, she messaged me. She literally sent me a WhatsApp message and said, I don't think your child has ADD or ADHD. And I was like, okay, what do you think? And it was just random. And she says, I've watched her for 2 weeks before coming to you. And based on her mom being a nurse, she sort of knew a few things like symptoms. And she says, I actually think she has seizures. And I'll be honest, it was a good thing hearing somebody say she doesn't have ADD or ADHD. But at the same time, it was confusing hearing somebody say she has seizures, because I'm like, she doesn't have any of the symptoms, that I've noticed.
Completely confusing to hear that.
Yeah, so I was quite taken back by it. But at the same time, I said, okay, we've done everything ADD, ADHD wise. Let's just do this since nothing's helped previously. So I decided to go to a brand new doctor, a specialist pediatrician, went to her, explained the situation. And this particular pediatrician as well, she decided, okay, let's do everything. Let's test on every aspect. So she booked her in for a hospital stay. Abrianna had just turned 12. It was the day after her 12th birthday, she was booked into hospital. She had an EEG done. She had numerous blood tests for allergies, for any abnormalities. Every MRI scans, every test you could think of was done on this child. And believe it or not, she was diagnosed with absent seizures. And for me, the importance that came out of that was simple things of paying attention to your child and also trusting your gut feeling. I mean, no harm to anyone, like no offense to anybody, but everyone did what they could. But sometimes me as a parent as well, I also thought, like, how could I not realize that my child had seizures, something as drastic as that? But all her only symptom was literally daydreaming. So the same way you and I are discussing and chatting right now, you can be chatting to Abrianna, even if it's in the car, and suddenly she would just be blank, staring out the window. And you'd think, come on, she's a child, she's daydreaming. That's the word that would come to mind. But little did I know that at that moment, she's having a seizure. So what happened was, over the years of being misdiagnosed, the medication, being on ADD medication, Ritalin, Concerta, it also sort of aggravated her seizures. So that's how there was never an improvement, because even if the medication could have improved her, it didn't allow it because it's treating the wrong diagnosis, the wrong condition,
the wrong condition.
So so that's what happened there with her. And since then, she's been on the correct medication, which is Epilim. Her also, if I could throw it in saying what I've said so far, the effects of that about paying attention to our kids and making sure we get the right diagnosis. It's nice sometimes as parents, we just want to diagnose them and fix the problem. And I felt I also rushed into it because I was so looking for a solution that every time I heard something and every time somebody said something, we're like, okay, let's fix. But it destroyed her emotionally as well because she started to feel like she was, and I'm going to use the words that a then 10, 11, 12-year-old used. She would use words like, I'm useless, I'm stupid, I'm silly, I'm ugly.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it wasn't nice to hear. It really wasn't, because she's like, Mom, this medication doesn't work. I'm not okay.
And that must be really heartbreaking for you as a mom, any parent. It would be heartbreaking for me as a father.
I cannot explain to you because it felt like every decision I made was at my child's detriment. You know, it just didn't help her. But since then, she's been good. She's been good. She's improving on the epilim. She is on WorksheetCloud, as you'll have noticed. I mean, that in itself, one day she's doing an exercise on WorksheetCloud and she comes running to me for maths. I cannot explain to you how Abrianna, and I use the word hate. She hates maths. And she comes running to me with my laptop and she's like, Mommy, I've got 77.
Brilliant.
And I was like, well done. And she went to school and she wrote a test and she's scored. I mean, obviously she's not jumping from low marks to drastically high, but there has been an improvement. Teachers have noticed it. I've noticed it. And the best, most important part is she has noticed it. And in doing that, on being on the right medication, it's improved her confidence because now she understands that it wasn't her. It was just a mistake, a wrong diagnosis, the wrong medication. And she's learned to grow from it. And yeah, that's basically our story.
Your story in a nutshell. Tell me,
in a nutshell.
How do you think she feels now that she realizes the things that she's been going through for the past couple of years, because it's been quite a while, don't really have anything to do with her ability or lack of ability, but rather because of the seizures she's been having, and now seeing an improvement? How does she feel, if you can put her feelings into words?
If I put her feelings, to be very honest, it's not as pretty as I just painted it.
Okay.
She is still adjusting. I don't think we sometimes realize what the emotions our kids go through. Sometimes we think they're young and they don't understand something, or they're not feeling or wouldn't feel that. Abrianna is still adjusting. She's happy to know that the diagnosis changed. We had to explain it to her because it was also kind of hard trying to explain to her, hey, you don't actually have this, but you have seizures, and to explain what seizures are. So she then reached a point of feeling like, oh, there's something wrong with me again. That was the mindset. And we had to change that mindset. So now on a continuous basis, we keep reminding her, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Yes, you have a condition, but it's treatable and it can be fixed and can help you as long as you take your medication. I mean, there were times where she questioned the medication, the Epilim, because of her past. She reached a point of, should I trust it? Shouldn't I trust it? It's all me. And she would skip her meds or something like that, purely because of the years of misdiagnosis and knowing that it didn't help. She became skeptical about everything. And she started, as I said, it's still an improvement, but confidence-wise, she's starting to get there. I've noticed the improvement. I can see she's also starting to see the improvement slowly. She also, as a child, expected, when we first put her on the medication, she expected that her results from getting scraping passes, for example, in maths is the ultimate subject, scraping passes in math, she herself set herself unrealistic goals. She thought, okay, I'm on the correct meds now, so I'm going to jump to a B and an A. And when she didn't get it, she burst out crying. She was so emotionally destroyed for the first term of this year. And we had to explain to her, it doesn't work like that. It's gradual steps, it's baby steps until you get better. And it's also hard work. So we also have to reiterate, medication's not just going to fix everything. You're also going to have to put the effort to have to learn it. Because now she's got to close gaps that we never knew existed, because we never knew that she was having these seizures in class. Also, if I could just click rewind for a bit, the one part that I've forgotten is with the misdiagnosis, Abrianna also developed a phobia for maths. So she doesn't just not like it, she literally has a phobia. So when we did the EEG for her, even though it showed the seizures, we gave her a fake maths test with the help of her teacher last year. Her teacher was in cahoots with me, and we proposed this test to her because we needed the child to experience it as if she was at school. We needed to create a school environment at the hospital. So the only way we could do that was to tell her she had a test to write on that day.
That is horrible, especially because it's maths. I don't like maths. Am I allowed to say that on camera?
If she was casual, we'd never actually know how she really feels at class.
Makes sense.
So it was hard, it's horrible. But in doing that, she had 5 seizures in a matter of 40 to 50 minutes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And then this year we did her 6 months repeat, and we ran the EEG again. And we did a similar scenario with the help of this year's teacher. And the same thing happened. Again, when her the maths test, that's when she has the most seizures. So that in itself shows you that it's not just absent seizures that she's struggling with. It's now from the absent seizures, it's led to the confidence, which has led to the phobia for a subject, anxiety attached to it. So her anxiety turned into a phobia because she was having the seizures during maths, which we were unaware of. It led to such severe anxiety that she ended up having the phobias for maths, that maths is literally like as you'd have a phobia for an animal.
Heights,
yeah, Abby has a phobia for maths. So now we're trying to get her out of that. And again, her teachers are brilliant this year. They are being amazing and supportive in the sense that they're teaching her to love maths. So they even tell her, we don't want you to get A's and B's. We actually just want you to love maths. We want you to like it and not be scared of it. And I also feel that's so important because sometimes we push our kids just for grades and we don't understand how they're actually feeling emotionally. And they need to learn how to enjoy a subject for what it is and to do it to their full potential. That's so important for me. I mean, yeah, I'll be honest, I was quite hard on Abrianna when it came to her results. I'm going to say it because I feel it's relevant, because Abrianna is actually the one who pointed this out to me. So I would often always compare myself to her, and I'd be like, in school I was like this and I was like that, and I was a straight A student. And I battled to understand why Abrianna is the complete opposite of me. And she pointed out sometimes it's not nice to always compare ourselves because they're so different and we don't understand emotionally what a child is going through. And that in itself as well was a hard learning point for me, because as adults, we want the best for our kids, but we sometimes don't filter how we say it and what we say. And I also had to learn to tone down in how I was saying something or what I was saying to her. But yeah, she's improving, she's getting there. She's actually starting to enjoy certain section, which it's quite humorous. She'll come home after writing a test and she'll be in shock. She'll be like, I actually got 70. And I'll be like, well done. She'll still be standing shocked, like, I don't even know how I did it, but I did it. So yeah.
That's fantastic. So you are seeing the results of your labor and her attitude starting to improve, and she's starting to form a better relationship with mathematics. Shaz, I know from experience that some teachers are quick to suggest, and some doctors are quick to diagnose children with ADD or ADHD, and sometimes without thorough examination. I'm not bashing teachers or doctors. They're human, and even with thorough testing, they can still sometimes get it wrong. During my time at WorksheetCloud, I've heard many stories about children being put on ADHD medication and the impact it can have on the child. Symptoms like weight loss, headaches, tiredness. These are just some side effects of the medication. Now, to be clear, if a child really suffers from ADHD, which isn't the case with Abrianna, and it impacts their life negatively, these side effects may be worth the cost. But I think that parents need to be very aware of three very important things. You touched on one of these a little bit earlier. One being that medication on its own isn't always a miracle cure. I think that's even what you're finding now with the seizures, never mind ADHD, which Abrianna doesn't have, but medication on its own isn't a miracle cure. And if I recall correctly, you touched on how perhaps you, but definitely Abrianna, thought that now that she's on medication, things are going to be entirely different. So that's a misconception that some parents and children have. Two, medication isn't, the decision to medicate isn't to be taken lightly. And three, sometimes teachers and doctors can be wrong. Don't shoot me in the comments below. Sometimes teachers and doctors can be wrong, which is exactly what we have in your case here, Shaz, as a mom of a child who was misdiagnosed. I'm not saying children shouldn't be on medication. I'm not a professional in that regard. I'm not knowledgeable enough to form a strong opinion, even though I have some personal experience with ADD and ADHD medication. But I do think parents should question these diagnoses before they end up giving their child medication that the child shouldn't necessarily be on. There is nothing wrong or insulting with getting a second or third opinion. I think you mentioned this earlier. Your child is your child. You're the parent for a reason. I'm not saying that I'm against ADD or ADHD medication, far from it. There are many children for whom being on medication has been a massive help. But as a parent, there's nothing wrong with getting extra advice before making a final decision. And I think that's really just the point of what I wanted to bring across today in this interview with you, that sometimes we are quick to jump to certain conclusions because I think ADD and ADHD has become far more prevalent in this day and age than perhaps when we were in school, or well, at least we didn't know so much about it.
The symptoms of both ADD, ADHD, absence seizures, and who knows what else are so similar. As I said, I mean, even for myself, I'm the type of person who is very analytical, firstly, and love to research everything. So exactly as you said, I repeat, I'm totally not against ADD medication, 100% not. I mean, I'll be very honest. I still study, and when I do, there's times where I need that take one tablet just to give me that extra boost. So I understand the benefits it may give kids who battle with ADD and ADHD. But it's so important to just make sure you get that second opinion. Yes, doctors don't always get it wrong, sometimes very fractionally, but it's also not their fault. Neither is it the teachers, neither is it the parents. I mean, even as a parent, you beat yourself up. I beat myself up, not realizing what was wrong. And also when I found out everything, I was so hard on myself. But sometimes we just need to take a step back. Also, the way we portray ourselves as parents to our kids, the kids feed off our energy. And it's so important to, as I said, going back to my tone, the way in which I would talk to my child, the way in which I would say things, the way in which I would compose myself and be calm. There's so many different factors that's so important to our kids, and to make sure that we can analyze them properly. I was one of the parents, as I mentioned, I wanted a solution. I was so desperate for a solution, so desperate to fix, that if I had just stopped for that moment and said, okay, and also the cost factor involved, it costs a lot to get all these tests done. But if you're going as far as getting a diagnosis for ADD and ADHD, just an extra 5 or 10 minutes with the doctor to just run through any other likelihoods. Let's just run through all factors before we jump and put you on something, because yeah, putting a child on the wrong medication, the side effects are detrimental. Abrianna went through drastic weight loss. She went through drastic mood swings. As I mentioned, she was on counseling weekly for the anxiety and for our past. She was coping with all of that. And in doing that, it also reached a point where one day her counselor had mentioned that Abrianna seems to be having mood disorders, which we were worried about because the medication was bringing about mood disorders. And it was those sort of things that I heard and I took in deeply that got me to make the decision I made of saying, I just analyzed the whole situation. I said, okay, it's not helping with school, it's not helping with attitude, it's not helping with confidence. Now there's the mood changes. I'm like, nope, it's just not making sense. Let's take her off it. And I'll be really honest, the doctor who diagnosed her now with seizures said it was the best thing I could have done, because had I left her on for another year and a half, it could have caused worse effects. And her absence seizures is something that can be corrected. If the medication, she can be on the medication now, and it can be something that can either stop, it doesn't have to be lifelong, because it's also triggered a lot by anxiety. So there's lots, every child is different, every person is different, but there's so many factors to take into consideration. And for me, that's the most important part. Like, don't skip a step. Let's do every step to get there.
So Shaz, in this instance, your intuition as a mother's intuition may have literally saved Abrianna from a year of unnecessary suffering, the side effects of being on medication that she didn't need to be on to start with, before she went to grade 6, and it was this grade 6 teacher that you said was just really taking a keen interest in her and taking note of her and bothering to speak to you about that. So I think Abrianna is really lucky to have a mother like you, Shaz, who kept trying even when nothing was working. And no, because this happened, this continued for a couple of years, and despite that, you didn't give up, which is fantastic. And also to have a teacher who cared enough to bother to take special notice of her in this world where some teachers really just want to reach the end of the day and go home.
That means a lot, because, as I said, nobody will understand how I beat myself up about it. But also to add in about teachers, I think also as a parent, the other thing that you've got to keep in mind is keep pushing at it. Don't just take anything that's said to you. Teachers are also, sadly, schools have changed. Things have changed around us. Classrooms are cramped. And the one thing that I think also helped contribute to the teacher paying attention is, if I could say it in quite a humorous way, I was a nag of a mom, in the sense that I reached a point, a nag in a good way, because one of the teachers' comments as well was she doesn't have a lot of parents who actually pay so much attention to their kids, who actually put so much energy into their kids. And I'm not saying that to boast in any way. It's purely because I wanted the best for her and I wanted to try and help. I stopped at trying to fix. Now I was trying to help, because I realized fixing wasn't getting me anywhere. It wasn't fixing anything. And in saying that, what I did was I kept in communication with the teacher via WhatsApp, since we weren't at school anymore. And I was like, please, can I have progress on Abrianna? Please, can I have progress on Abrianna? I constantly pushed for feedback. I needed to know, is she improving? Isn't she? Is she doing any better? Because of the million different things, like I've taken her off the medication by now, but I'm still doing the extramural activities, still doing the whole growth mindset, change your mindset, think positively, trying to teach that to her. So I just wanted to know what's working, what's working where. And I think that's also important as a parent. Just keep asking the questions, because sometimes our teachers can't do it as well. If they're sitting in a class of 30 kids, it's also difficult for them to know which kid they're supposed to be keeping their eye on. So I knew that there's a problem with Abrianna. I just didn't know what it was. So I kept asking, as I said, the nag of the mom, kept messaging, is there improvement? Is Abrianna being okay? Is she behaving? Do you have any complaints? Do you have anything good to say? And that's when she decided, okay, I'm going to scrutinize this child, watch her for 2 weeks without me knowing. And I got the feedback, which was lucrative. I mean, it actually got us to a proper diagnosis. And yeah, it's a good place now. At least we can move from here and hope for that it only continues to improve.
Well, you say negative mom, I say fantastic parent. I think there are a lot of parents who, there's some parents who have this attitude that school, academics, education, that is the teacher's problem. That's why I send my child to school. It's not something I can think about. And I think you've proven here that being an involved parent, I mean, you have a job, you have a life as well, right? We all do. It's not like you decided to suddenly homeschool Abrianna, or you still had things you needed to get done in order to look after yourself, your family. Yet you still found the time to be involved. And I think feedback that I get from a lot of teachers, they often tell me, we actually like parents that get involved because that helps us do our job. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it helps your child do better. So really well done. Shaz, is there any other advice that you would like to give to a parent that might be going through something similar, or anything you'd like to share with parents or teachers that are watching?
All I can say is work together with your child, work together with the teacher. You're not in it alone. I thought I was in it alone until I started opening up as well. As I described Abrianna, I'm also quite a shy somebody. I also go into my own little bubble and want to fix everything on my own. But speaking out, being an involved parent, as you said, the word involved, got the teacher to also open up to me and also help me, got Abrianna to start talking to me, because sometimes, going back to, as I said, tone, it's so important. She also started closing up because she didn't want to disappoint me. So my biggest advice right now, which I feel worked for me over and above everything else, is just ask for help when it's needed. Work as a team. You're not in it alone. The teacher's not in it alone, and your child's not in it alone. Just reach out and hear the teacher out, hear the child out, and also listen to your instinct as a mother or as a parent. It's so important to just hear it all out and play it over, write it down if you have to, and make sense of it. But yeah, don't ignore any small sign. It's important.
Brilliant. I can hear the teachers nodding their heads right now at that last piece of closing advice there. So folks, don't stop watching, because at the end of this video, which we're getting to in a few seconds, I have a special message for you. But before we get there, Shaz, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and to being brave enough to share this story. It's quite a personal story. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments and some criticism down in the comment section below, but that's okay, because people don't always have to agree with one another. They don't always have to agree with us. But in this case, it's brilliant that thanks to your dedication as a mother and with a good teacher that was paying attention, Abrianna now stands a fantastic chance of having a completely normal life as she grows and progresses, and as you mentioned, fills those gaps. So thank you very much. This message will have given many other parents a lot of hope, and thank you for being such a fantastic example to all the WorksheetCloud parents that are watching this right now.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you for watching this episode of Head in the Clouds. Please share your comments or your own personal experiences with ADD or ADHD down below. I personally read every comment and I'd love to hear from you. Now, no episode of Head in the Clouds would be complete without me giving a shameless plug for the amazing and awesome WorksheetCloud online learning and revision app. If you sign up at WorksheetCloud.com today, you'll be giving your child the easiest way to study for class tests and exams across a range of subjects like mathematics, English, Afrikaans, natural sciences, geography, and history. Subscribe to WorksheetCloud today and eliminate all the stress associated with exams. This is Adrian signing off from today's episode of Head in the Clouds. And remember, exams suck, but they suck a lot less with WorksheetCloud. So visit WorksheetCloud.com right now.